7 or 8 days before the conference, I stumbled across a new accessory for an HP calculator. And I thought, wow, this is cool. I haven't heard this before. And I called Gene. I said, Gene, have you heard about this thing? It's everything but the kitchen sink. And he says, no, I haven't, but it sounds interesting. Do a presentation on it. Gene, I'm already doing 2 of the presentation. Oh, you can do it. I will point out that some years ago, he had me do a presentation from scratch after I arrived at the conference.
And it was good.
Thank you.
And you get to do it again.
Not quite that bad. So, why do we collect HPs? One, we admire the elegance of their operation and construction, and 2, we appreciate the quality with which they're made. And anyone that has any experience with, for example, Texas Instruments calculators know that they are wretched pieces of crap next to the glory, the gold contact-filled, precision injection, plastic molded, high-quality components that comprise most of HP's early things. In fact, some of these HPs are made so well that even though they are literally decades old, they are actually used in work environments today. And a very good example of that is not this clicker.
Hold up higher. Keep holding.
Anyway. So, this presentation was put together very quickly. I've had almost no time to get familiar with the device I'm talking about. Consequently, the signal-to-noise ratio is a little higher than I would like, but if you don't like it, you can all drop dead. So, the HP85. I love this machine. It's everything I thought was cool about HP in the late 1970s. Remember, this was late 1970s. If you wanted a computer on your desktop, you would get like an Apple II, AD. But this was a serious machine. This had a custom 16-bit HP processor instead of the little toy 8-bit processors that other computers had. It had a really nice keyboard. It had a built-in mass storage device, a built-in display device, and a built-in printer. These things are just wonderful. And you can find one, scrape the crud off it, and generally they will still work. I've got an HP 85B sitting in the closet at home that looks like it was stored in a pot of boiling chicken fat for the last decade. It still works, except for the tape drive, but everything else turns on and works. So, if you're thinking, I'm going to get one of these because they're cool and relatively cheap, there are some mechanical parts that will degrade. Accessories you'll need for full functionality will be hard to find and expensive. So consider the tape drive. Anybody, how many people here work on their own HP machines, have taken a calculator apart, or? Yeah, a lot of us. There used to be a guy here named Jeff Quickfall. I think he's dead. But no, I think he died. If he were alive, he wouldn't have missed the last 3 conferences, be that as it may. Like the card readers and the handheld calculators, the tape drive can suffer from the rubber on this little capstan wheel getting all gooey. Excuse me, I just lost my camera. Recording. So, disintegrating rubber capstan. So, of course, you can take it out and repair it, but then you have to find tapes. They haven't made these tapes for 20 years. I just bought an unopened box of 5 DC200 tapes. It's still in the shrink wrap, which is starting to turn yellow, and every single one of them failed because the little rubber tensioning belt that runs around will also disintegrate. And I've ordered some rubber tensioning belts from Amazon. Apparently there's a standard size rubber band that some people have had some experience with replacing, and those come in while I was here. But even so, repairing those tapes is going to be a real hit and miss proposition. What about disk storage? Well, you can get a number of HP interface bus devices. Here's some floppy drives on top, floppy drive hard drive combo, a 5.25 inch, and another floppy drive. The 2 dual 3.5 inch drives are called HP 9121s. They're widely available and they generally work, and if they don't, you can generally open them up, replace the drive belt, hit the read-write head with an alcohol Q-tip, and Bob's your uncle. But to connect to your HP85, you'll need an 82937A HPIB interface, unless you have an HP87. Well, those interfaces are kind of expensive. These are eBay prices pulled down less than a week ago. And then you'll need a mass storage ROM and a ROM drawer to put it in. So the thing I tried to highlight in yellow is an HP mass storage ROM, part number 00085150001. So the ROM drawers are cheap in some manner, and the actual ROMs are, but it's starting to add up. And then you need the drives. So if you're going to replace your unreliable and slow tape drive with a more reliable and much faster floppy, you're going to spend, as of last week, about $565. And at this point, unless you actually are using your HP85 to control your decades-old HP lab instruments, you're looking north of $1,000 to get a working system by now. And unless you're a hobbyist with more money than sense, like me, that's beginning to look like a lot of money to burn on a toy with no practical use. But anyhow, even so, even if you buy all this, at the end of the day, you're buying decades-old equipment that probably, won't work when you get it. If you buy it on eBay like we all do, you're probably buying from sellers that have no knowledge or experience. Even if they swear to God something's working, when you get it, it might not work. And even if everything does work, it's old, it can fail at any time. But what if I told you your HP85 could have it all? What if I told you that toiling away in deep obscurity, a frustrated HP85 owner realized that modern technology could solve all these problems? And that's not emulating it in a Raspberry Pi, although that would be a good idea. A lot of people, as I mentioned, use these old machines as industrial controllers. And they can't easily be replaced because all of the lab equipment they've got is HPIV lab equipment. When I started working at CARE, the OCR company in the early 1900s, they were still using a 9825 back in their production center. So what is this amazing invention? It's called the Everything But the Kitchen Sink board for the HP 85, 86, 87, and I should be handing one around, but fortunately Gene is back there. He can reach behind the HP 85, grab the bare circuit board, and start passing it around to people. So, does the laser work? Yes. This little board is called an INSI board, and it's basically an Arduino processor and the 16 gigabyte micro SD card. And this one person, toiling away in obscurity, designed this entire board to plug it into. And what it does is emulate tape, floppy, and hard drives on the 16 gigabyte micro SD card. No jumpers. You have a configuration file. And this emulation is transparent. All of your programs that access the tape drive or floppy or hard disk drives will continue to work perfectly. Now, at this point, I would like to note that the emulation for the tape drive is so good that it has roughly the performance of the tape drive. When you tell it, yes, so it does sequential access. So when your HP85 internal thing says, I need to move to block blah on the tape, it will read all the blocks prior to that off the emulated tape drive. So you might as well emulate disks. These are the disks that mount. It's when you turn your 85 on with one of these plugged in. And emulated disks are specified just in a text file. You take the micro SD card out, plug it in an adapter, plug it in your computer, edit the text file, plug it back in. There are no jumpers in the board. And it's just very simple, straightforward stuff. So the emulated interface has a select code of 3. So disk specifiers are :D 3XX. Emulated tape drive is :T. The :T, HP never produced an external tape drive for the 85, so there will only be one tape drive. So if you want to use the emulated tape drive, you have to physically yank the cable inside the 85 connected to the physical tape drive, which honestly you might as well do. I mean, mine works, but it's really slow and it's going to die someday and eat a tape. What you should probably do is leave it plugged in if you have a working tape drive and suck all the programs off your tape and save them in the SD card. Be a lot better. There's an emulated printer, and it can coexist with a physical 82937 HPIV interface board Because you might have that HPIB interface board plugged into non-storage devices. And so you'll want them to coexist with the emulated board, which is fine because it can do that. So we've got much higher performance because the emulated disks are a lot faster than physical disks. Modern tech on a board. And that's cool, the end. Nah, just kidding, just kidding. Remember the name, everything but the kitchen sink. So as long as we've got all this hardware there, we can do a lot more than just emulate storage devices. We can add 16K of memory for the raw or the vanilla HP85A and 256K of extended memory for the 85B, 86, and 87. All known 85 and 87 ROMs are on this board, and they can be loaded either at boot time or dynamically. Yes, I said real-time clock. This is a misnomer. It's a time of day clock with only 1 second resolution, but at least now you can read date, day, and time. The regular 85, for those of you who don't know, does have a millisecond level clock in it, but it's just a counter, basically, so you can't get any time or date in from. You can get timings, but not date. Enhanced auto start capability. The regular 85, if you have an executable file on the tape cassette called auto-st, it will be loaded and run when you boot. But with the everything but the kitchen sink, you can actually have batch files that will be loaded and executed on boot, just as though you type them in. That's very useful. 70 new basic keywords. Yes, a lot of these are dynamic mounting and unmounting of ROM images and disks, and a few others, but they're very nice. Extra memory. You get a virtual 82 903A 16K memory cartridge, which I mentioned. 85s, 86, and 87s get 256K of extended memory. Physical memory modules can coexist. Oh, I didn't write that correctly. Physical memory modules can coexist with the virtual memory cartridges, but you will need to tell the system how many physical memory things you have in the config.sys file so it knows where to map the extended memory. All the ROMs. All known ROMs for the 85, 86, and 87. There are 18 virtual ROM slots. Now 4 of these are used for the auxiliary ROMs, which implement the basic keywords I mentioned back then. And that leaves you 14 available for mounting your own ROMs. Now those ROM drawers I showed you only mount 6 at a time, and you can have 3 or 4 of those ROM boards, but this way is a lot easier. And you can coexist with physical ROMs. So if you have a collection of physical ROMs, but there's that one obscure one you've never been able to find, just mount that as a virtual ROM. Just don't mount the same ROM twice. That would be bad. I don't know what would happen, but I'm not going to try it. And some of these new basic keywords, listROM 0 shows all the ROMs, and listROMs 1 shows the ones you've got mounted. And the reason I actually had to call the guy and ask him because he refers to ROMs by 3-digit octal numbers.
337. You should know that.
I don't. I know mass storage ROM and matrix ROM and advanced. Yeah.
He and Everett, when they talk about it, they don't say the mass storage ROM. They just say 337, 342, and it's octal.
Yes, it is octal. Octal is weird. So here are the ROMs in the configuration text file. So you can have the description of the ROM, the file name containing the emulated ROM image, and whether or not it's enabled. Super simple. Note, description, and this third one's these last 2 are the only ones that matter. And the images for 85 ROMs are in the /ROMs 85 directory, and for 87 ROMs in the /ROMs 87 directory. Again, I miscalled it a real-time clock, but here's some of the new basic keywords you have. It's a little torturous getting to some of the stuff. It returns the year, month, days, and then seconds since midnight. This sounds like some of that stuff we did back in the 70s where you know the Unix epoch clock and stuff like that. Be that as it may, enhanced auto start. We can execute a series of keystrokes or a specified batch file. They're very basic batch files. It's just every line in the batch file is as though you typed it in the keyboard, but still that's a lot more than what the standard auto start does. New basic keywords. 70 new basic keywords, which I'm not going to go into. Screen I/O, we can read and write every location of the screen. SD card file management, mounting and unmounting ROMs and emulated drives. SD-get and SD-save to read and write basic programs as ASCII to the SD card. This is cool because it means you can edit a basic program on your big desktop computer using your giant monitor and cool keyboard, and then write them to the SD card and load them in the HP85 like this, instead of having to deal with the tokenized program.
Cool.
Peek and poke.
You can also write programs in HP85 Basic to change the configuration file on which you are running.
Now, some of you might be asking yourselves, how does Bob know so much about this? Good question. Glad you asked. So when I was talking to Philip, the guy who came up with this board, I was saying, look, I need you to overnight me a couple of these, and I'll pay for the overnighting, but I belong to a group of people who collect these old HP things, and we're having a conference in Nashville in about a week, so I need to get it in, play with it, crank out a presentation. And he says, oh, what's your group called? And I said, HHC. I've never heard of them. Well, here's the website. I can hear him typing in the background. He says, I've sold this to 3 of the attendees of your website. Really? I've never heard of it. None of them's mentioned it to me, and I'm looking at a list of presentations and nobody's giving a presentation on it. Who are these 3 people? Bob, Sylvain, and Chuck. Thanks, guys. Anyhow, peek and poke, which really takes me back. Amazing online documentation. Now, I'm one of these people that I get a little pissy sometimes. I want a printed manual like we had back in the day, preferably spiral bound so it will lay flat. But this online documentation is really, really good. I mean, that really kind of shows you what you can do with the medium. All the source code. This is an open source project. You want to see how he did it? You can go do it. It's $140. I bought 2. I may buy more. It's like potato chips. Just if you've got an HP85, you should just immediately get one of these boards. I mean, you have 0 excuses not to. I guarantee you it's better than anything you've got, and you will thank me. And it also makes the HP85 cool enough that you'll want to drag it out your closet and start playing with it again. Philip Frieden, I think that's how I pronounce it. He lives in Sunnyvale. He is desperate to talk to people. If you want to call him up at 4 in the afternoon and say, I've got a list of questions, you'll make his day. He really loves talking about this stuff. Has a British accent. He did the original idea, board design and firmware. A friend named Russell Bull did additional board design and firmware. And Everett Kaiser did the auxiliary ROMs and implemented the 70 basic keywords.
Everett, just for reference, Everett is the one who wrote the assembler and the assembler manual for the HP85 and 86 and 87.
I did not know that. That explains a lot.
He started as an intern in labs or I think initially in the production line or something, and then in labs, and they made him go do a project, and he ended up writing the ROM. And he today has a Windows-based emulator on all the 80 series. So that's why he's the inside guy and does all the assembly stuff.
Now, I brought one of my personal 85s back here. It's back in that thing, and it has one of these plugged into it. So if anybody wants to wander back there, turn it on, play with it, please feel free. Do not touch the machine next to it. Just keep your mitts off, but play with the 85 all you want. Any questions?
I'll add one more note about it. If
Yeah.
you have an 85 or 6 or 7, and you haven't used it in a long time, and the config file looks scary, don't worry about it, because when you order it, he asks you a bunch of questions, and you just tell him exactly what you have, and he hand tunes the any file for your configuration. So when you get it, you literally open the box, take it, plug it into your machine, turn it on, and everything works, regardless of what your machine is and how it's configured and all that.
And when you look at the SD file, he includes pre-built configuration files for like 85 with tape drive, 85 without tape drive, and several other variations, so you can quickly switch the stuff in and out. But the configuration files themselves, they might look scary in this presentation, but I guarantee you nobody in this room would have trouble with them. I mean, if you did, you shouldn't be in this room. Leave now. All right.
In addition to all the ROMs, It also has all the disk software like hpcalc and all the software that's out there, like, I don't know, 50 disks worth of software.
And I can't overstate, Philip is awesome at support.
Yes.
I mean, he's helped people use this for as a diagnosing ROM to figure out how to get their systems working. And so he's awesome at support.
One last thing, the board has Bluetooth on it, and though it doesn't do wireless stuff now, it may eventually.
We've always